Hi, it's Lou Collins and I have another Craft World card template for you. This is the corner fold up template. Now this is a really cool three-dimensional design. So this is what your template will look like when you print it off. You can just print it off onto copy paper and you can then transfer it onto some cardstock for your card base. I use a removable spray adhesive to do this. And there is another video on Craft World which will be linked in the post with this template so that you can see how I use the paper templates that I print off at home, and it's really quick and simple. So just trimming down to my card base there. Now with these we have got an adjusted template for you at home, so these are actually going to be score lines for you and this one's going to be a cut line, so those would have already been adjusted, so don't worry about those. You'll see that the score lines on your template are the dotted lines, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim the center of this, which will be your solid line on your template. And then I'm going to take my scoreboard and I'm going to score these other lines. So we've got some diagonal lines in here to be scoring. So with these, I'll show you, as I always do, how I score diagonals. Now I always come to the last line on my scoreboard and I'm going to pop the two ends of the line to be scored onto that last line. This is just much easier than trying to choose a line or a gully within the board elsewhere. I'm going to score these two diagonals and then we can remove our template, and because I've used repositionable glue, this will peel off really easily. So just popping my tool back in there. So you should have your cut line, your two score lines here, and we need one more score line actually through the center there as well. Nearly forgot about that one. There we go, just turn that over because this is quite a long card. Now this is a good size card base. The beauty of it is it will fit within a smaller envelope. So just measuring this for you, so the envelope can be as small as 4 by 4 if you wish. So taking off this template here gently and popping that to the side. I can reuse that because it's still sticky. So now we've got our score lines onto a beautiful ivory piece of cardstock. So to create the actual card base, what I'm going to do is fold this in half towards me with that opening here. I'm going to fold this centerpiece here in as well. Okay, and you can flatten it and fold that. And you'll see that as you bring the two together, this cut line that you've done down the middle, they overlap. Okay, so they can overlap, and then you've already got your stand-up card there, like so. But we also want to fold back these diagonals, just like so, to create almost like some wings at the back. And then we have our beautiful corner fold-up template. Okay, now again, like I say, you can easily pop this into a flat envelope however you wish to fold it. There's lots of different ways when you sort of deconstruct this. So now I'm going to decorate this, and what I've got to decorate it is some paper tree die cut pieces. There's beautiful images in here. I've chosen from Paper Boutique a pattern paper. This is just a nice ivory that's similar to the main cardstock of the card base, but I've got some pink polka dots on there as well, and they match, the pink matches these. And then just to go around the edges of my layers, because this background is very similar to the card base, I want to lift it up a little bit and make those edges a little more obvious, and I'm going to do that. I've got old paper, Distress Oxide, and a blending tool. So with the old paper colour, it is kind of a yellowy green, it's got a green tinge to it. It's quite green on the label. It's actually a very sort of ivory colour again, but it has got a green tinge, which will work with the greens and the colours in the paper as well, because there's some leaves and accents in there. So let's first of all cut down my panels to fit the card base. So I can open this back up and I can start marking and trimming these. So what I've cut so far is 4 squares, and they will all fit within the squares of my card template, and then 2 of the squares I've cut diagonally into triangles, and these will then fit these corners. So I'm going to bring in my Craft Stash Essentials blending mat, and each of these I'm going to go around the edge with my old paper ink. Now you don't of course have to use this colour if you don't have it to hand. Use a colour that suits the background papers that you're going to be using, but I'm just going to do a very light blend around each of the edges. Now we can glue these pieces on, and I'm going to glue them flat so that if we decide that we want to fold this completely flat for an envelope, that won't disrupt with that. But you could also create a really pretty kind of box if you wanted to put this in instead, rather than the flat envelope. That would be a nice gift. You could really sort of go to town with all your paper flowers and your 3D embellishments then, without worrying about having to fold it flat afterwards. So just placing these on, you can see how that green really lifts up those edges, and it isn't a dark green, it's not too harsh, it's keeping everything nice and light and subtle still. So I'm just using a wet glue here, and the wet glue is I believe it's the Creative Expressions, the Cosmic Shimmer glue inside here. I've just decanted it into a bottle with a fine tip applicator, and you can get those on Craft Stash. You can get a pack of 3. I believe they may be Woodware brand, but you'll need to check that. That's going by memory, which isn't, with me, it's not always reliable. So just popping these ones on. Now these I'm actually putting right up to the score line here, because when I trimmed down the squares, I did all 4 squares slightly smaller than the squares on the template, and then directly across the middle. So you could do these so that you cut a small piece away from this long diagonal line as well if you wanted to, just trim that down, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep that like so. Now just pop the lid back on my applicator so it doesn't dry out. So then you'll see, like so, we've got our mats and layers here, and that's all covered up beautifully. So for decorating this card, I'm going to keep it really quite simple. I've got a die cut, or a couple of die cuts, from the paper pad that we were looking at. That's the paper tree one. This one says it's time to celebrate your special day, and the circle actually fits really nicely within the square. So I'm going to pop that on first, and I'm actually going to put that on with some foam tape. Now my idea is that this card won't fold flat for me. I will take the time to create a lovely box for it to go into, but you can of course put this on with wet glue. With the paper flowers that I'm going to put on, you could just use some flat die cut flowers maybe instead, and then everything will fold up nicely into an envelope. So you can see there that then sits. Make sure you do put this on at the right angle as well. It needs to sit so it's facing you. I'm going to just put on my happy birthday to you, I think this says. Yes, happy birthday to you, from the same pack, so I know it's colour coordinated. There, I'm going to place that like so. And then lastly, I'm going to put some florals. I'm actually going to put these in this corner here, so we don't need many of them. So I'm just going to bring in my hot glue gun. This is my favourite adhesive for putting down paper flowers. So let's just untuck this. So a little bit of hot glue will always hold paper flowers within seconds, really. It doesn't take long at all. Very often the paper flowers have metal stems on the bottom, but you can easily snip them with your usual craft scissors. They're not usually an issue. You don't need any special snips for them. They're made so that paper crafters can easily use them. So just using some nice sort of I suppose these are dusky pink colours, a little bit of peach in there, some ivory as well. All of these to match nicely with the papers and the embellishments that we've already put down. So just taking my stringy pieces up, and there we go. Now of course you can take this all one step further by adding maybe some lace detail to the edges, for example. There's lots more you can put on there, but as a nice simple card base that looks effective, that's how you use the Craft World fold up template.